Now, speaking of things that actually could destroy our country in the very long run, one of those things is the increasingly unhinged and incorrect view that Americans have about free speech, which is actually dangerous in some ways. We've got to break down some really concerning new polling data from the nonpartisan Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, aka FIRE, which disclosure I do a little bit of consulting work for, but they just released this really shocking poll that shows a stunning number of Americans seem to believe that words can be violence. They found that most Americans report thinking that, quote, words can be violence. They asked over 1,000 people, a representative sample, how much, if at all, does the following statement describe your thoughts? Words can be violence. And 22% of Americans said this describes my thoughts completely, while 23% said that it mostly describes their thoughts. That means 45%, nearly 1 in 2 Americans, thinks words can be violence, and thinks that strongly. Meanwhile, 23% said that it somewhat describes their thoughts, and 12% said it slightly describes their thoughts. Only 20% said it does not describe their thoughts at all, which, spoiler alert, is the correct answer to this poll. In another interesting twist, Republicans, independents, and men were more likely to reject the idea that words can be violence, with 27% of men, 28% of independents, and 27% of Republicans saying it does not describe their thoughts at all, compared to only 14% and 11% of women and 11% of Democrats. And shocker, guys, Gen Zers, young people, were more likely to believe this nonsensical notion than older Americans, although older people believed it at kind of concerning rates as well. Gen Zers were also more likely to say that words are violence, FIRE reports, with only 12% of 18 to 24-year-olds rejecting the idea entirely. But seniors aren't far behind, with 16% of those older than 65 saying it doesn't describe their thoughts at all. Gen X is the most speech-supportive age group, with 32% of those between the ages of 45 and 52 completely rejecting the idea that words can be violence. Now, I have a lot to say about this disturbing polling result. But the first problem with this is that it's simply not true. Words are not violence. Just ask somebody who's been punched in the face if it's the same thing as someone insulting you or saying something nasty to you or deeply hurting your fifis. It's not. I mean, there's a reason that we teach kids, very young children, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me, because this is a key distinction, that there is a meaningful difference between physical violence and emotional or intellectual discomfort. These are not the same thing, and conflating them as the same is incredibly dangerous. For one, I mean, we already have a population that's just riddled, especially young people, with anxiety and depression, and now you're telling them that words are violence, and so guess what? They're going to see the world as an even more scary place than it already is. They're going to feel even more anxious and more depressed and more under attack, and it's only going to further fuel this disastrous mental health state that we have in so much of our population. And the third, I think most consequential problem with this widespread belief that words can be violence is that it undermines the essence of a free society, allowing for free speech, and allows radicals to justify political violence against people who say things they don't like. I mean, if words can be violence, who gets to decide? Maybe what's super offensive to the point of violence to you is not to someone else. And to somebody else, something totally innocuous to you is super offensive to the point of being a violent assault on their personal dignity. We cannot have a society, a free society where people speak their mind, a democratic society or a republic where people have a say over their government and over the controversial issues of the day. We cannot have any of these things if we allow people to start labeling speech as violence. Because if they can label the speech they don't like as violence, well, guess what comes next? Well, actual violence is then justified in response to that speech. It's just self-defense at that point. If you go down that bizarre, dark school of thought and intellectual tunnel. So what we have here is a widespread belief that if it continues to grow and if it becomes ever embodied into our law, it is no exaggeration to say, is a civilization-destroying belief. Once we allow words to be treated as violence, well, we invite violence in response to words at every turn. And once that starts happening, our country will eventually rip itself apart at its seams. So, I'm really deeply concerned about this poll's findings and the trajectory of free speech in this country more broadly on a social and cultural level. Our legal protections remain strong, but if the attitudes of the public change over time and the culture is eroded, it won't necessarily stay that way. But what do you think of this poll and my take on it? Let me know in the comments below.